Hello and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay and I almost mispronounced my own name, which is always a good start. And I'm here with one co-host this week.
I'm Joe Lalo.
All right, and we're not sure where Jeff is. This was kind of an impromptu because last week we were going to record these are going to be kind of our predictions for marketing and publishing stuff in 2009 or possibly 2019. And I got sick and then had company, and then I was going to say, let's just blow it off. And Joe sounded kind of disappointed because he'd made his predictions and wanted to share them. So I was like, oh, let's do it this weekend. So here we are doing maybe a short show for you guys, following the trend of all the other self-publishing podcasts and sharing our predictions. Have you listened to any of the other predictions out there?
I have not, so it's very likely that I'll be repeating what other people have said. If I'd feel good if I did, because it means I'm on the right track.
All right. Well, I listened to a couple of shows. That's the perk of having a late, coming in late. And I think I have a couple that maybe new takes on them or something. But do you have any news you'd like to share with folks before we jump in?
I do have some news. Well, aside from I've mentioned in the past, it's still not out yet because it's still on pre-order, but Recession, which is Big Sigma 5, is on pre-order. It'll be coming out on the 30th of this month, and I will be releasing it to my Patreon on the 15th of this month. So, yay. Also, I just finished a book apparently that people have been waiting for. It's one of these where whenever I had a moment on the road, I was writing it, and so it was very low priority. But it is I don't even have a title for it yet. It's called Sorrel's Story. It's a sequel of a prequel. That's why it wasn't high priority for me. But I just finished it this morning. It was supposed to be a novella, but it hit 55,000 words, so it's a novel, and therefore I will release it as a novel. It got a bigger pop from my fans than some of my more recent releases that I thought were anticipated. So I'm all of a sudden looking forward to that, and that's an extra release in my calendar that I wasn't anticipating. So that's what I've got.
Excellent. I've got one of those 55,000 word novellas too. And I just went ahead and called it that because the novels were all like 110, 120,000 in that series. We here in the sci-fi and fantasy world sometimes go just a touch long. For my own news, I finished up the third Chains of Honor book, which is a series 2 or 3 years ago. I kind of got distracted. I think I got distracted with my Fallen Empire series, so an 8-book series, and somehow never got back to Chains of Honor, even though at the end of book 2 I had put, look for the third one this fall. So especially every fall now, people have been like, hey, is that out yet? And I'm like, no, sorry. And that was a lesson to myself. Don't put when something will be coming out, because you're breaking a contract to the reader essentially, and I did feel bad about it. It was just hard for me to get back into it because the first 2 didn't sell hugely, so there's that lack of motivation and the fact that I'd gone off into writing sci-fi. But so this is kind of an epic fantasy. Wrote the third one, sent it off to my beta readers, and I decided the original plan was to do 4 books, and I for a while I was like, maybe I can just do 3 and finish up the series, since before I got back into it I wasn't super excited about it. But now that I've been back in that world, I've been having fun with the characters, and I decided to outline book 4 this weekend while the beta readers have it, and I'm going to start writing tomorrow and just kind of release those back to back, pushing off the sci-fi series I've been talking about that I want to start. But that is okay. I will just accept that I'm not going to make huge piles of money in the first quarter of the year. Not that the sci-fi series guarantees that either. It's always rolling the dice. So that is my news. Do you have anything else, Joe, before we jump into some predictions?
No, I'd say we're ready.
All righty. Do you want to go first?
Okay, we're going to do all of our predictions at once, or alternate?
Why don't you do one and I'll do one, and we'll alternate.
Okay. Most of my predictions are upon the theme that things are going to be getting a little bit more difficult going forward. And I think that one of the things we're going to see a lot more of, and I'm in a few of these already, I've dubbed them author micro guilds. These are usually in the form of Facebook groups where it'll be just 30 or 40 authors within a genre, or even an extremely specific subgenre that are sort of automatically cross-promoting each other and putting together anthologies and stuff. I feel like as things become trickier to market, you're going to see these things growing more numerous and stronger because, I mean, earlier on, this is the sort of thing that would produce one of those multi-author bundles, which were really successful for a long time. And you ended up with not just the networking and cross promotion that comes along, but also there are different people like, just if you cast a wide enough net, there's going to be enough people within that group that some of them are going to be good at advertising, some of them are going to be good at formatting, some of them are going to be good at, so on and so forth, all the aspects of preparing one of these. And it basically becomes its own little, you know, publishing empire once it grows to a sufficient size. And I feel like those things are going to become a bigger part of is. I mean, it's already a big part, but a bigger part of self-publishing going on.
Yeah, there definitely are some things like that out there. And I think you have to be careful and see with me, I'm in some too, just for the Facebook groups. You have to be careful and make sure you're in with good people who are, I mean, not to say there's evil authors out there listening, but I mean, I feel like there was one group that kind of got taken down by Amazon piece by piece last summer, and they were all kind of Facebook friends and doing stuff together. So like, be careful of that guilt by association thing that could come if anybody in the group is doing anything remotely gray hat kind of thing that Amazon or whoever might look down on. But I agree. That's one of my predictions, is that we might see a return of kind of more of the multi-author box sets. They've sort of faded from the view as the emphasis has just been on Kindle Unlimited lately and Amazon ads. But they were very effective, I felt. I think a lot of people got into them to like get their USA Today or New York Times letters, and I never cared about that. I just wanted more readers, and I always felt more comfortable promoting those than actually just plugging somebody's book that I hadn't read. It's sort of like being in an anthology. People don't necessarily expect that you've read all the stuff in the anthology. Are you trying to when you're in these groups, trying to read the other authors so you can genuinely say you enjoy their work? Because I always kind of have a problem with that. Like, if my readers enjoy another author, I'm okay plugging them. Like, if I've heard a lot that they enjoy it, but sometimes I'm so picky that that I have a hard time. Traditionally published, indie published, whatever. It's just kind of rare for a book to click with me and for me to finish it.
I very rarely. I mean, I do a fair amount of reading now, much more than I have been doing in the past because I got to refresh the palette. But I very rarely seek out the books of the other people in the group. Generally speaking, when I'm cross promoting, I am cross promoting something that we've done together. So, I'm promoting myself and also these other people. So I can be fairly honest about my contribution and also talk about the other things that are in it. That's usually the relationship I have. And I'm in one or two. And I've also drawn from them because I recruit, I curate, that is, for Story Bundle on more than one occasion. And they're handy for that. And in those cases, of course, I read the books, I ask for submissions, and go through and find appropriate stuff. But when it comes to actual cross promotion, it's usually only a project that we've done as a group that I promote.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't find out whether you really mesh with people until you actually do something big. Like, let's try to get our New York Times letters. And then you're like, whoa, that person is like way too type A and demanding way too much. But I think overall, though, they are good. They can be powerful. And like some of the best things, because of the launches, you want to kind of like stagger your sales over a week or two when you launch. The best way to do that really is, I mean, it's great if you can book some ads, but also if other authors will promote you to their lists. And I've talked about before how it's kind of a struggle for me because that's not something I'm that into. I only email my folks when I have new releases or sale or something I'm going to plug. So just because some other author has a new release coming out, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to email my people out of the random just to tell them that. And I don't know how others feel, but I get a lot of email back like, oh, I trust your recommendation. So if you liked it, I'm sure I'll like it. I'm like, well, I didn't even read it. So I feel bad then.
Yeah, it is worth pointing out that when it comes to the cross promoting like that, where you're promoting other people's releases, if you just suddenly start doing it and your list isn't accustomed to that, you could probably going to expect some backlash. So if you're going to start doing it, you should probably ease your list into it, or even maybe create a segment. I don't know. I haven't thought about it too much because I don't really have too many plans of changing the way my list is used in the immediate future.
Yeah, I've actually kicked around the idea of just starting a list that was just about like maybe some fun news, quirky things that sci-fi fantasy fans might be interested in. Oh, here's some new releases and sales that are going on this week. But it would be quite a bit of work, so it'd be the kind of thing like I would hire someone to do, and then it's sort of like, well, is it even, am I going to get enough out of it? Basically I'd be more available for promo swapping kind of stuff, but a lot of extra work either that I'd be paying somebody for or doing myself, which is probably questionable whether or not that's a good thing. All right, well, I'll go ahead and do my first prediction, since it kind of ties in with what you were saying. It's just that I think that we're gonna, this last year was kind of the year of Amazon advertising, and the year before was maybe Facebook ads. I think people are gonna get a little frustrated, if they're not already, with how much it's starting to cost per click to play in these ecosystems. And I think because, there's gonna be some people who really thrive on that and love like crunching the numbers and making the ads and seeing which ones work, and that's really fun for them. And maybe that's only like 5% of authors out there that are trying to do what they can for marketing. And for those people, I think it'll continue to be great because they're really good with their numbers, and they know like if I have a 7-book series, I can spend this much on book one, and even if I'm spending $10 on a book that's 99 cents, I'm going to come out ahead in the long run because this many people read through. And that's great. If that's your thing, go for it. I do think they continue to be powerful, especially AMS ads, since anybody surfing the site is probably there to buy stuff. But because I think a lot of people will get frustrated who just aren't willing to babysit it that much, it's a lot of time as well as a lot of money to really get in there. That I think we will see a return to some of the older methods, like the multi-author box sets. Like I've been in anthologies where I put a short story in that kind of ties in with my world. And those are the kind of things where you're not going to like turn into a top 50 Amazon in the Amazon store based on the read through from that short story to your series, but they kind of trickle in over time. And if you have some of those things out there, it's just sort of gradually always feeding into, and making your sales a little more steady. I've mentioned before, like last year, half of my income about came from my backlist and half was from new stuff. So, and of course, some of that is just from people reading the new stuff and then checking out the backlist. But I also have a lot of things out there at this point, a lot of free book ones that just every day somebody's downloading those free book ones, finding them however, even when I'm not advertising. And so there's just these lots of little ways for people to find their way into my not free books. Do you think, how much luck have you had with that kind of stuff? And do you see anything new coming as far as like what might come after Amazon ads, or what's the next big thing?
I have to say that, like, because you talk about how people are going to be getting frustrated with ads. I barely dipped my toe in Amazon ads last year, super low level where I had a high return on investment with virtually no investment. Uh, so I've been sort of relying upon the old methods all along, and it's continued to pay the bills, but with, diminishing amounts. So certainly it's still effective enough to keep Joe Lalo working. And I'm probably going to I want to try to revitalize that sort of thing, because I kind of enjoy the anthology type stuff and some of the other things, just because it's another release. It's a fantastic way to network. Like we were earlier when we were talking about those little micro guilds and how you never really know how you're going to work with somebody until you work with them. Even if you get into one of those groups and you work with 40 people on a gigantic project and you find 3 of them you really mesh with, that's fantastic. That's almost worth the price of admission, because now you've got 3 people who you can do a higher level of collaboration with and know you're going to do well. So I definitely think that sort of thing is going to continue to be useful in the future. And in terms of stuff that might be coming, like my next prediction, and I would very much like this to be the case, it would be great if it could be made to work, is I think we're going to start to see things like indie-focused ad firms. Like you say, some people are huge fans of crunching numbers, and they can crunch their numbers and put in the hours and get ads to pay. Those people are going to become, that is a skill that is in a way more marketable than their writing skills at that point. And if they could franchise that out and handle a bunch of indie authors, then that would be fantastic for all involved if they could genuinely make it pay. So I would like to see, and I suspect we will see to some degree in the coming year or years, people who start doing advertising for for groups of indie authors, and we've heard of a few of them. I've never been in contact with any of them. I think they're going to become a bigger part of the industry going forward.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know Russell Blake did a kind of end of the year summation and was talking a lot about how he has kind of increased his income this past year by hiring somebody to manage his ads. And I feel like a lot of people want that. So if some people that are good at it, and it's kind of always a challenge to prove, like, did these sales come from these efforts, especially if you kind of have a high baseline to start with where you're already selling hundreds of copies a month of your titles. But it's definitely something I would be interested if, although it makes me a little uncomfortable that Amazon links all your stuff together. So you're giving somebody the same password and login information that gets to your tax and bank account information and all your book sales. And I've always been a little leery about hiring a VA that would have access to that. And this would be kind of in that ballpark, unless they were gonna give you the ad copy and stuff, and you'd still have to do most of the setup. But
Yeah, I agree.
I agree that could very well become a thing, more of a thing. It's already, people are finding folks. I forgot to mention at the beginning that Willow, my 7-month-old puppy, got spayed the other day. And so I have a puppy, well, she's 50 pounds now, wandering around with a funnel on her head, clacking against the walls. So if you hear a little background music, it's possibly that. Now that I lost my train of thought, but what do I think might be coming next? I agree with you, Jo, that, and we've seen it all along, that kind of harnessing the power of others in your genre, especially those who write very similar stuff to you, can be super powerful for promotions. And I think maybe we'll see something beyond just mailing list swaps, which a lot of people have said they're less effective. It's sort of a little maybe ennui from readers that keep seeing, if they follow 10 authors and get the same, look who has a new release this week. It's a little bit like the internet marketing world was when I used to pay attention to it, like all 10 people who you follow suddenly emailing about somebody's new release. Yeah, and I feel like, but there are other things maybe that will come along. I don't want to say like apps and things like that. There's always stuff that gets thrown out that nothing ever really happens. But maybe we'll see an evolution of group collaborative promotion stuff. And I've been in some projects where you do like anthologies and group collaboration things, and so far mixed results to less than stellar results, I would say, as far as actually creating stuff. But I think some more creative promotion type stuff could come along that we'll see. All right, have we talked about that to death? Do you want to go on to your next prediction?
Sure. This is one that's based upon, I don't know if anybody else was following. Like, I have done a little bit of work on Tumblr. I have had 2 things that released basically sequentially on Tumblr, just because it was a good platform for doing long form text with like its own semi-dedicated URL. And I don't know if you followed what happened to Tumblr recently, but Tumblr made a rather significant shift that has had deleterious results. For those who haven't been following, Tumblr decided that they were not going to allow any not safe for work artwork on their site anymore. And they've decided they were going to do it using algorithms. And as a result, basically any image that has skin tone in it was getting flagged as not safe for work. The post that said they were going to start flagging stuff as not safe for work was flagged as not safe for work. Like, it was ridiculous. And they started hemorrhaging artists, and it was primarily an artist platform. Just because, I mean, I had an illustration of a cartoon wolf from one of my books that was flagged as not safe for work. Like, it was just a disaster, and they lost a ton of users. And this is all by way of my prediction is, I think we're going to have to start looking at social media from a layer abstracted. Like, if you base your entire presence on Tumblr, and we've said on the show many times that you should avoid basing your entire presence on social media. Your primary presence should be your website and your email of your mailing list. But Obviously, social media is useful and useful for directing those, and you should have a presence on social media. I think going forward, we're going to be finding a lot more people sort of finding a layer between social media and their primary platform. Like if this then that is a good example. Um, I am on Pinterest, and for a while I thought that I wasn't posting anything there, and then I remembered I'd set up an if this then that, and everything that I was sending to something else was showing up on Pinterest. I think we're going to have to see a lot more of stuff being cross-posted automatically to different places, just so that when those places self-destruct, we can very easily drop down onto another and still have our main platform intact. Because we're going to see more and more of this going forward. There's weird changes in the ways websites are being held accountable for their content, and you're just going to have to be very mindful of the sudden disappearance of what might be your primary advertising platform.
I hadn't heard about all that Tumblr stuff since I don't follow the art world too much. That's interesting to know. And you're right. It's like you never know. You don't want to depend too much on some social media site. As far as like, I know there's a lot of things you can set up that will post on multiple different sites, but some of them, like I think Twitter, for instance, stopped allowing that. So might
Yeah,
be
that's another thing that happens. The API will change, and all of a sudden, half of your stuff doesn't work.
it's a good reminder that just always focus on if you are on the social media sites, kind of using them to drive content, drive listeners back to your site. As opposed to like doing all your posting on Tumblr or Pinterest, or there's no reason you can't be putting those same images up on your site and have them in both places and link back to your site. And the more links you have going to your site, as we talked about in the SEO Q&A, the better it is for the search engines, and then the more likely you're just going to get random people stumbling onto your site who might then see, oh, you've got these free books for sale in your sidebar over there. All right, so my second prediction is kind of talking a little bit about Amazon ads again, is that Amazon's kind of going to go the route that Google AdSense went, AdSense slash AdWords back in like 2005. When they first started displaying their ads, they were only on the search engine results, and people were bidding to have their ads displayed on the search engine. The higher you bid, the higher up your ad was, same kind of deal as Amazon. And then they opened it up to webmasters, and you could copy a little snippet of code and put it on your site, and Amazon ads would display on your site. And suddenly they had like way more, space for their inventory. I will say that as somebody who both used AdWords and made money from AdSense, this was actually my primary income back before I started publishing fiction and making it pay. You never got as good of clicks, as good of buyers on the websites as you did from the search engine results. But, usually you didn't have to bid as much either to be displayed on that. And there was a potential, if you had a website, this is how I made my money with a lot of content on it and displayed the ads prominently, you got paid for the clicks that the merchants were paying for. So, I got to the point where I think I was making like $10,000 a month at one point, almost solely from AdSense. So like many things that had its heyday, and my stuff tanked a lot during the recession, like a lot of other stuff. But so my prediction in a rambling way is that Amazon is going to follow that route and do the same thing. They're going to realize it's ridiculous for there to be 64 pages of ads on their carousel under a single book, and then nobody's clicking through to those. And since they really seem to be into the ad money that they're making, like that's become a real big source of income, why wouldn't they expand it? So could be an opportunity for us to have maybe the price of clicks will go down as there's more places for our ads to run. And also, if you happen to be an author who has been blogging all this time, it could be an opportunity for you to monetize your website with, especially if you're talking about books, with related stuff. So I'm kind of hoping that will come to pass. It seems like Google laid the road, and it's surprising it hasn't happened yet. So we'll see. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, Amazon makes a lot of money from their web services, so they clearly are like interested in having sources of income that are they're service based. So if they were to expand out to a full Amazon advertising network, yeah, that would definitely increase the number of places where Amazon ads are seen, and therefore decrease the cost of Amazon ads. I think that if they, again, if they're not already working on it, they certainly ought to be, because that would be excellent for all involved.
And we'll see authors suddenly blogging a whole lot more. The whole blogging is dead thing will be like, oh, time to write to my blog every day. I'll be back on there. I never actually did any affiliate stuff other than my own book links or any ads on my own author website, but that would kind of be the one thing that I would consider doing. You always have to question, like, do you want to send people off to somebody else's stuff, or do you want them to surf your site and check out your books? But if it showed like related fantasy sci-fi books and I could get paid for the clicks at the same time, I would at least give it a shot. All speculation at this point, but that's one of my predictions. Is I foresee that possibly happening. All right, do you want to do your last one?
Yeah, there is a thing that I think we're going to see a little bit more of. I actually just learned about this just a few days ago. There is an app called Libby, which is on smartphones, and also I think it's available for Windows. And this is an overdrive app that is for libraries. Basically, if you have a library card, turns out my library card is expired. It just expired weeks before I decided to try this, so I'm going to have to renew and then try it again. But basically, you just enter in your library card, and then you are able to use the digital version of your library, including audiobooks, and you can read in the app, and you can listen in the app. And I think we're going to see a lot more. Like, we've had people on the show talk about library income, and there are people who would poo-poo saying that, like, well, who goes to the library anymore? And lots of people go to the library. But as more people become aware of apps like this, and as additional versions of apps like this exist, I think we're going to start seeing library income pop up a lot more. And I mean, potentially also income from things like audiobooks might drop a lot more, because if you can have a literally free audiobook source, even if it's more limited than Audible, a lot of people are going to preferentially use apps like that. So I think that the putting a library on your phone is going to start to shift the market and make libraries a lot more attractive to indie authors.
And attractive to listeners and readers, because I actually feel like we've benefited from the fact that libraries haven't really gotten their stuff together very
Yeah.
quickly. I know early on my mom wanted to like check out ebooks from the library, and she's like, okay, let's figure out how to do this. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And it was like 9 steps to get it on her device. And we wrote it all down, and she finally got to the point where she could get library books. But dang, and here's Amazon. Oh, I can just buy it and it appears on my phone or Kindle or whatever.
I was poking around on the thing, and it's literally, it lets you, like, it will try to guess where your library is, because it knows where your phone is. So it's like, is this your library? Okay, and then pick your branch. And it will even, I don't know how, because I didn't get fully set up because I have to renew my card. It will even deliver the books to the Kindle if you want. So, I mean, yeah, I think that if this sort of thing gains ground and becomes more prevalent, and like I said, this was overdrive, but there's other people that feed libraries. If everybody has their own version, or if there is a unified version, I think the landscape's going to start changing, and you're going to see a lot more library-based income.
Interestingly, that kind of ties into my last prediction, which is, of course, one I would be delighted if it doesn't come true. But, anybody that, if you watch the financial news, that they've been talking like, okay, we could be having a recession soon. These things are kind of cyclical, and it's been about 10 years since we clawed our way out of the last one. And interestingly, we in the e-publishing, self-publishing world have not seen a recession yet, and how it will affect ebook sales. So, I actually saw Mark Coker had mentioned this on his Smashwords predictions for 2019 also. And he thought that it would actually increase ebook sales because, I think there's some data out there that suggests that entertainment is something people continue to purchase even when times get tough, and ebooks are pretty inexpensive. I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like we'll see if something like this goes on, there'll be like a move towards the subscription services where you can do all you want for $9.99, such as Kindle Unlimited, as opposed to dropping $5, $10 for ebooks multiple times a week. That might be an area where people cut back a little bit. And if it gets a little easier to use the library, that may also be something that people increasingly rely on. So like I said, I'm not out there analyzing things, but we're kind of back into that. Housing market's really expensive, stock market, everything's kind of up over where it was 10 years ago. So it seems reasonable to assume that something may be coming, and we will have to adapt and deal with it and see how it affects us. Um, I would say that it might be worth for us kind of trying a little harder to get into libraries. I know I check the box on Kobo when I upload there and on Smashwords, but I feel that there's just relatively few of my books are in libraries compared to sales. And I think it's probably a good time to just be a little conservative with, there's a tendency to think your income's going to keep going up as you continue to release more books. And often it does early on. Then you may kind of plateau, and even people have gone down as there's been more competition and stuff out there. But if you're on the upward trend right now, excellent. But probably don't buy a house or a boat, or at least don't do it if you have to take out a big mortgage based solely on your writing income. So probably just not a good time not to take on a lot of extra debt, which some conservative writers would say never do that. I'm very much a cash only person because it makes me comfortable. But do you have any thoughts on that, on like what might happen to our industry if strings tighten a little bit? Do you think ebooks will continue to sell, or people will cut back a little bit?
I agree that ebooks are a fairly affordable luxury, but they're not the most affordable. So, like as you say, the subscription things probably become more attractive. You'll probably see what handful of people still rely primarily on paperbacks for their enjoyment will probably start shifting toward ebooks. So, like that is it's going to be a small slice to a small slice, but still, as income starts to decrease, the more expensive will go to the less expensive. I guess maybe that means that audiobook readers will shift over to paperbacks and ebooks as well if they actually purchase them as opposed to getting the Audible credits. But I think that by and large, I mean, a book is not a bad investment in terms of value for the dollar. You're going to spend however many hours you're going to spend on a book. It's, as so many people have pointed out, you get much more out of it than the latte that costs the same thing. So I think that Mark Coker is not completely. I mean, there's logic to ebooks becoming a more attractive thing, but even if they're a more attractive thing, they're going to be more attractive to people who weren't buying them, and the people who were buying them will be looking for things more attractive than them. And I think, particularly with the Kindle having been out for so long and the bubble sort of having already burst for ebooks, the number of people moving away from ebooks toward cheaper things than people moving toward ebooks from more expensive things is going to be very heavy on the leaving of ebooks. So I'll agree that if a recession hits ebooks, we're probably going to see a lot more people who want KDP-like things. And maybe that will lead to a lot more book retailers creating KDP-like things.
It's always possible too that indie authors could once again really benefit because we can price our stuff lower. I know I came in at the end of 2010, and in 2009 we'd had like the Amanda Hawking with all her 99-cent paranormal vampire things that really took off. And if you sell enough 99-cent books, you can make $1 million. So it may actually hurt us less than traditional publishing if they're going to kind of stick to their guns with the $9.99 and $14.99 ebooks. But maybe just a time to be cautious and, like I said, not buy the house based solely on a mortgage that you can only afford based on your author income.
That's true. It's also, as you point out with that, because we can price lower if we need to, it's possible that if that sort of thing happens, the free series starter will become a much more valuable tool than it has been in, say, the recent year or so. For a long time, for the beginning of my career, it was literally the thing to do to get a career was to have a series starter. And then it's sort of lost its steam. It's possible that as people search for cheaper products, those free series starters will start to look more attractive to more people. So that's another thing.
All right, well, there we have it. Not all doom and gloom. Maybe possible some good things coming along. I continue to use those free series starters myself on any of my like 8-book series, and I've certainly found that they can be effective. And I think if we do see more subscription kind of models and more libraries getting better at delivering ebooks. It's just another reminder that craft is super important to kind of create characters and stories that people want to read again and again, because that's when, I mean, that's kind of the win-win for me is if I have something in Kindle Unlimited and somebody's like, I borrowed it and I liked it so much I bought it. I basically got paid for two, two reads or two sales, whatever you want to call it. So always good to focus on that kind of stuff going forward. All right, any
Absolutely.
final thoughts?
Um, just keep at it. The thing, it's a weird thing to think about, but the thing that allows, as things get more difficult, the people who aren't putting enough effort into it are the people who fall out the bottom. And the more people who were lowering the bar, shall we say, they get kicked out of the bottom of an industry, the higher the bar gets. It's weird. You hear people talk about a rising tide raises all ships, and whether you agree with that or not, um, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So if things are going to continue to get harder, and you continue to stick with it, then the piece of the pie that you're getting will start to get a little bit bigger. There's a bright side to everything.
Let's finish with all the platitudes that we can possibly
Every
get.
possible one.
All right.
It ain't
Well,
over till it's over, and the fat lady sings.
excellent, excellent. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. We will have our regular Tuesday episode coming up. I guess this is a catch-up episode, and hopefully we gave you something to think about. And keep listening in 2019. We'll be here. Bye-bye.
So long, everybody.